Hi, this is my mother-in-law, Martha. How long have you been part of the long-term nursing care?
I have been a registered nurse in long term care for 30 years.
So you've seen a bunch of death from the family side and the nursing side,
Yes,
and you've learned some ways to help family members along.
I have.
Okay, from the mom side, what is the one thing you want your kids to know about getting ready for the parents to die?
I want them to have a realistic outlook. Parents don't live forever, and when it's our time to go, it's our time to go. And depending on how close you are to that time, how advanced your age is, and if you don't have dementia but you're up in years, a lot of your elderly people do not want to be resuscitated. I don't want to be resuscitated. If it's my time to go, let me go, you know? And I think that parents and kids need to sit down together and they need to have a conversation and they need to have an honest conversation because if a parent has a stroke and they're left incapacitated and they don't have somebody to help make those decisions for them, then chances are their wishes are not going to be followed because you never told anybody what you wanted. You never put down on paper what you wanted. And then you have to make sure that the person that you grant that power to will do what you want to have done. If it means that you don't want your life prolonged by machines or whatever, that they're not going to go behind your back and do that. You need to have your plan set up. And I'm not saying, that it has to be morbid. It's just people don't want to talk about this stuff. But it's becoming more and more important for people to talk about this stuff because as a patient in a nursing home, if you didn't want this stuff done to you, then you should have spoken to your family prior to. If you didn't want a feeding tube, if you didn't want to be on life support, you should have spoken to your family because once you're not able to make those decisions for yourself, somebody else has to. And it makes it hard for them.
When thinking about making the decision of what to do and move on, how do you normally talk to the resident about what they can do and can't do and getting their stuff ready?
Well, I'll give you an example. I just got my cousin in a long term care facility where I work. And according to his paperwork, he was a DNR. But when I got his paperwork at the facility, there was no proof of that in his paperwork. So I had to make him a full code because until I see proof that he's done a DNR, I have to have a copy of that DNR. If I don't have a copy of it, he has to be a full code. And so I went to him. I just got back from a visit with him and I explained to him. I called him by name and I said, "Sweetie," I said, "Did you want to have CPR if anything happened to you?" And he said, "No, I already did the paper." And I said, "But nobody has a copy of that paper." And I said, "So right now, if you had a heart attack, you became unresponsive, we would have to do CPR on you." And he said, I can't just tell you not to do it. And I said, no, I have to have the paperwork. So I made a blank copy of the form. I pulled it off of the computer. I went and got the social worker that worked there, and we went back to his room, and she asked him if he wanted CPR or he didn't want CPR, and he said, no, I don't. And she said, okay, you sign here and you sign here. And there were two witnesses, and they signed in two places. She's taking it to the doctor for them to sign it, and I will get a copy of it tomorrow to put in his file for his brother to hold on to, and we will have a copy at the facility so that I can then officially make him a do not resuscitate. So going forward, if something happens to him, we won't do CPR on him.
Okay. First, let's define some uh, terminology that we're using.
Okay.
What is happens in a medical facility when it says you have a DNR? How do they proceed, and what is the difference between the directive to physicians? I'm having trouble with the words today, and a DNR. If we can start there.
Okay. A directive to physicians is a little bit more descriptive. It says yes or no, I want a feeding tube, but I don't want to have CPR. It gives you a little more step by step of what you do and what you don't want. And there have been some physicians that went against the directive to physicians just because, well, it's not typically a DNR. Okay, so I get the state form. Here in Texas out of hospital DNR. Do not resuscitate. Now, what I tell my patients' families and my patients is that a DNR does not mean I'm not going to help you if you're having trouble breathing. A DNR only states that if I walk in that room and you are already deceased, I'm not going to do CPR on you and bring you back. But if I go in that room and you're having trouble breathing, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to help you to alleviate that problem. If it means putting you on oxygen, if it means calling the ambulance and seeing maybe they've got pneumonia, there's a reason behind that. But that's all a DNR says, is if I walk in and they are already gone, I'm not bringing them back.
So basically, if they're having an asthma attack or an allergic reaction to something, you're going to make sure they get the care. But if they are dead, you cannot find a pulse, you are going to mark down the time, put it in the paperwork, and let the family know and proceed with the other directions.
Call the physician, let the physician know, and then at that point, I'll call the family and let the family know.
Okay. When is the best time to make sure you have all this done? When you are fully healthy, or or you're starting to realize something may happen in the future?
Different people do it different ways. I think that as soon as you have grown children, I think as soon as your children start to leave home or have left home, I think that's a good time to start thinking about it. Because at that point, anything can happen to you. At any point in your life, something can happen to you. But it's always better to put something down on paper. Okay, this is what I want done with this. This is what I want done with this, and be descriptive in who you want to have what. Because you do not want to leave things undone and your family fighting over stuff that aren't worth fighting over after you're gone.
I agree with that. Also there are things to help, like life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
what uh what in your experience has been the your experience with the life insurance?
Okay, there are two types of life insurance. You have term life and you have whole life.
Yeah.
Whole life, you have it for the rest of your life. Term life, if you outlive the policy, then it's no longer good.
Okay.
You know, uh, and then chances are you're too old at that point to purchase another policy.
Yeah. You
You
put all
know,
that money in and it's useless.
right? And they've got the money and you don't. And so that is my understanding with the differences between those policies. Now, if it's any different than that, I don't know.
Okay. What is a medical power of attorney and what is it used for in the long term care uh,
Okay,
situation?
you have a financial power of attorney and you have a medical power of attorney. One dictates that person is able to handle your medical care, your medical directives should you need to have something done. The financial, of course, speaks for itself. That one would handle the financial part. That being said, I have had family member come to me and say, well, I have medical power of attorney. I'll just move mom here. You can't do that. He's just my stepdad. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, as long as she is still conscious and able to talk to us, you don't have anything. Because your power of attorney does not kick in until the person you have it on is unable to make decisions for themselves. That means even if they've got dementia and they say, I don't want that person doing that, legally, if they are in a long-term care facility, we have to change that. We have to allow that resident who's got dementia, which more times than not, they're not going to understand to do that. But we're having an issue with this one daughter. It's her stepdad and her mother, and she has medical power of attorney over both of them. But she thinks that when he makes a decision that she doesn't like, that she can just go and do what she wants because she has power of attorney. But I had to explain to her it doesn't work that way. At this point, you have no say in it. If push comes to shove and she becomes unable to make decisions for herself related to her care, he's the next in line. He's her husband. So her medical power of attorney doesn't kick in until both of them are unable to make decisions.
Okay. I think one of the next things we should talk about is the long term care facility. We know you can go in for short periods of time for rehabilitation and long periods of time of up until you have passed away. Can you explain more about that?
Okay, we have long-term and short-term residents. The short-term residents are examples. Someone comes in with a hip fracture, does therapy, recovers, and goes home. The long-term are somebody with dementia and is starting to wander and winds up on our secure unit so that they can wander safely in that secure area, or has dementia and the family is no longer able to take care of them at home, so they wind up in the long-term care facility. We've had people that have advanced cancer that are in our facility. We've had people who are on hospice that are also on hospice in our facility. So hospice comes to see them, and it's almost like an extra pair of eyes. They get the advantage because a lot of your doctors don't want to deal with pain management nowadays. They'll do maybe the tramadol or the narco or something like that, But if you're having pain from cancer, they don't want to deal with that. And so you go hospice, and hospice is able to deal with your pain management and keep you comfortable, and you're in the long-term care facility.
What is the youngest long term care resident that you've had?
Um, I had one that was 19 years old. She sustained some kind of brain damage when she was 3 or 4 years old and wound up in long term care. And that was years and years ago. And she lived out her life in long term care because her parents both became deceased and she didn't have any siblings.
Okay. What is the oldest?
To date, the oldest was 107 years old.
That is amazing.
We have one that's 104 right now where I work. She'll be 105 the end of July.
That is an interesting life.
And she still wheels around. Now she is almost blind, but and she still gets up and tries to walk. She's still continent of bowel and bladder. We
Mhm.
still toilet her. She doesn't have incontinent episodes, and that is very, very, very unusual at that advanced stage.
Okay. So, um, as a nurse, what is the one message you want people to understand as they're preparing for end of life?
I want the families to think about the person. Say it's a parent, think about them. You know, at the end of the day, you have a parent that is actively passing. And I have people that, oh, I don't want to see my mama that way, or I don't want to see my daddy that way. I want to remember him this way. If it was you actively passing, your parent would be sitting next to your bed. I get frustrated when it's not the same way for the parent. You know, you've got family that they don't come to see them but maybe once, twice a year. Oh, well, they won't remember me. I don't care. I don't care. We just had a 97-year-old lady who her son is in the same facility, and family would come visit him right and left and never stop off at her room and see her. Their excuse being, oh, she won't remember us. She won't remember us. She won't even know who we are. Okay, her granddaughter from out of state came to see her after lunch, sat with her for an hour and a half, and said, Nanny, I'm going to be back to see you. If you need anything, this is my number. I'm going to give it to the nurse. She left. We got her in bed, got her set up because she was going to have a nap before supper. Got her laid down, went back to get her up, and she had passed away, but she was laying in a position like she had just turned on her side and went to sleep. And it was like she went to sleep and didn't wake up. We weren't expecting her to die. We really weren't. She had been doing good, you know, but that's how it is. And the thing about it is when we look back, we sit there and we think, sometimes they're just waiting for somebody, and that must have been who she was waiting for. She was okay and ready to go at that point. But in long-term care, we have, you know, we have the 3 resident theory, and the residents go in threes. You have one that you're expecting, one that could go either way, and then one that's a total surprise. And it always goes those three. And she was our surprise. We weren't expecting her to go. She wasn't even sick. She was 97, but we've seen people get older.
What is the most surprising death that you've seen in a nursing home?
Um, I guess this is the strangest one. I was director of nurses at a facility in Huntsville, and I had a resident's brother call me, and he says, "Did y'all have somebody die today after breakfast by the front door?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I was talking to my brother, and he said that guy walked up to the front door, put his hands on the front door like he was going to go out, and just fell down and died." The next morning, after breakfast, that man walked to that front door, put his hands on that door, had a massive heart attack, and died. That was wicked.
That was wow.
I had never seen that before, but he described it to his brother the day before it happened to him.
Okay. Um, as a CNA and as a daughter and whatever, I've seen death a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I've come more than anything is curious. Because as a kid, it was morbid. Nobody really wanted to talk about it. And I never understood why any of the grown ups couldn't just explain any of the simplest concepts. Like, it's okay that they died.
Yeah,
It's like, what if we can't cry? What if we're too stunned at the funeral to cry?
that's okay.
And my mom kept telling me it's okay, and I'm like, but I don't understand. She was just talking to me.
Right.
Why are we putting her in the ground when we were talking to her earlier?
Mm-hmm.
So those sort of concepts have always interested me in understanding what happens as a human for the rest of um, the steps that need to happen after you've passed away.
Right.
But also, there was a point where one family member said, I want to be buried this way.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of what was in the paperwork, the other family member that was put in charge of that family member's death had decided, that's against my religion. We can't cremate you. We're going to put you in a grave. And that is one of the things that I've been scared of happening as a wife and a daughter-in-law and everything. I'm going to be there, and the one thing I want to know is, what do you want when you die? How did you choose what you wanted done with your body?
That is that is why it's very important for a parent to be positively sure of whoever they choose. Like with me, yes, I have three sons, but I know without a doubt that my youngest son is going to do what I want. That's why I have made him my power of attorney. I've made him my power over financial. I've made him, you know, in charge, because he's going to do, at the end of the day, they can say what they want, and all three of my boys know what I want. They know what I want. And two of them, my youngest and my oldest, are on the same page. My middle one, he is just in his own world. So I know without a doubt that this is going to get done because of who I put in charge. You have to be comfortable with who you're putting in charge. That's just like at the end of the day, I can talk to you all day about what you need to have done here in Texas, but not everybody's in Texas, so they need to look up and research what their state requires or what their state recommends that they have. I have a DNR and an out of hospital DNR, but which is a little bit of overkill, and directive to physicians. So all three of them are just kind of almost the same thing except a little more in depth. But the DNR technically will not cover me if an ambulance comes to pick me up and I die en route to the hospital. An out of hospital DNR will cover me in that transport. If I die in the ambulance, they won't bring me back. So that's why I kind of went with the overkill of having the directive to physicians, the DNR, and the out of hospital DNR, so I'm covered. Because like now, I go to get back injections and they tell you straight up, if you die in the course of them doing the back injections, they will do whatever they have to do to resuscitate you till you get to the hospital, and then they can let you die there. Even though your wishes are not to do any of that. It's because it's a separate, they're like a separate facility. They're not acute care. They're not long-term care. They are basically like a day surgery type thing. And so they've got a whole different set of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it kind of hard. It's like, well, I don't know if I want to have any more back injections, because if I kick off, I don't want them trying to bring me back, because who knows what kind of shape I would come back from,
Yeah.
what kind of damage would be to my brain. I just don't want to, I don't want to take chances with that.
That's understandable.
So, I don't know. I recommend that families talk to families. If you have aging parents, sit down and say, look, I know you're doing good right now. I'm good with that. I'm not trying to rush you anywhere. But should something happen, I want to know what you want done, because I want to do what you want to have done. And that's how that conversation needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because as hard as it is to be the one that's left behind, the child or the spouse or whatever, it never gets easier. It doesn't.
No.
But it happens, and you need to prepare.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you want to know?
I think that covered all the questions,
Okay.
and then I can build on it from there.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having this interview with me.
Not a problem. Bye.